On the night of the 24th August 2001, Air Transit Airlines Flight 236 was flying from Toronto to Lisbon at an altitude of 39,000 feet. When the plane reached the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, both of its engines suddenly stopped working because the plane had run out of fuel, causing the plane to start descending. With water all around and the nearest airport 120 kilometers away, there was no possibility of reaching it. This meant the only outcome of this accident was death. In this video, we'll dive into the chilling details of the incident that shocked the whole world.
You have enough fuel to make it to the airport?
Negative, sir. We're just running out of fuel. Just lost 2 engines and we need the priority, please.
On the evening of August 23, 2001, Air Transit Flight 236 was getting ready to depart from Toronto Airport to Lisbon, Portugal. With a non-stop flight of 7 hours ahead, the plane was topped up with 48 metric tons of fuel following its routine service and maintenance check. This flight was on an Airbus A330, known for being one of the most advanced and safest aircraft of its era. 48-year-old Captain Robert Pichet had 16,800 flight hours experience, while First Officer Dick Day Jager had flown for 4,800 hours. Both had flown the Airbus A330 several times before. Shortly after, 293 passengers and 13 crew members boarded the flight. Around 9 p.m., the plane successfully took off from Toronto Airport. The pilots then slowly turned the plane towards the Atlantic Ocean to take it to Lisbon. Within a few minutes, the plane reached its cruising altitude of 39,000 feet. During long flights, the pilot doesn't have much to do as the autopilot system handles most of the tasks. The pilot mainly monitors the situation and updates the control tower about the plane's location. 4 hours have passed since the flight took off. Everything was going smoothly, and most passengers were fast asleep. As the aircraft reached the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, Captain Robert Pichet noticed an abnormal reading on the engine number 2. An alarm bell rang, signaling the start of a challenging situation for the pilot. At around 1 a.m. at night, the pilot noticed that the oil pressure in the right side engine had significantly increased. Additionally, the oil quantity was low and the oil temperature was indicating as low. This was an unusual occurrence for both pilots as in their experience. The temperature of an operational engine typically increases over time. However, in this case, the temperature is rapidly dropping, which was not normal. Consequently, both pilots immediately consulted the flight manual but were unable to find any relevant information. Without wasting any time, the pilots make a direct call to Air Transit's Maintenance Control Center in Canada, urgently reporting the issue.
Mirabel Transit 236. Hi.
Hi, we have a little problem. We're getting the warning oil temp low and oil pressure high on the ECAM for engine number 2. There's nothing in the QRH nor the FCOM. Can you help us out?
However, the response they receive is less than satisfactory.
Please continue monitoring the error, and as soon as we have any updates, we'll get in touch with you.
Despite the faulty readings flashing in the cockpit, the flight seemed to be proceeding smoothly. The pilots, albeit concerned, initially attributed it to a potential sensor glitch. Little did they know, the catastrophic accident looming on the horizon would age itself in the darkest annals of aviation history. About half an hour later, another advisory message popped up on the cockpit screen, catching the attention of the captain. Typically, commercial airlines maintain an even distribution of fuel across both wings. However, the message indicated an imbalance, less fuel in the right wing compared to the left. While this was concerning, the pilot didn't initially view it as a major issue. Such warnings sometimes occur due to minor fluctuations in fuel levels. Employing a standard procedure, the pilot activated the cross-feed valve to equalize the fuel distribution between the wings, ensuring both contained the same quantity of fuel. Just 10 minutes later, the captain noticed a low fuel warning flashing in the display. Upon investigation, he discovered that the fuel level in the right wing had once again decreased. To their dismay, the combined fuel in both wings was now insufficient to complete the journey to Lisbon. The plane was basically running on fumes at this point, with only 7 tons of fuel left. That's like barely 6% of the total capacity. And to make things worse, it was dwindling super fast. In that critical moment, the pilot had no choice but to change course. They decided to make an emergency landing at largest airport on Terceira Island, the closest airport around. They wasted no time and got in touch with the air traffic control there, explaining the whole situation. Yet, both pilots couldn't shake off the nagging question, why was the fuel depleting so rapidly? And the big worry was whether they could even make it to largest airport. Desperate for answers, the captain asked the flight attendant to peer out the window and check the right wing for any signs of fuel leakage. But in the dark of the night, it was impossible to spot anything.
Captain?
Hi. Can you and Karen take some flashlights and go to the windows if you can see anything trailing back from the wings?
With fuel being guzzled at an alarming rate, like a ton every 5 minutes, the situation was dire. They were left with just 25 minutes of fuel, making it seem utterly impossible to reach Terceira Island. Next, the maintenance team advised the captain to ascend to 20,000 feet to confirm the fuel leakage. However, the captain declined the suggestion. He reasoned that, even if they confirmed the leak, they wouldn't be able to regain the altitude of 39,000 feet. Instead, he proposed that staying at their current altitude might allow them to glide a few more kilometers forward in case of emergency. But just then, disaster struck. The right engine burst into flames, confirming their worst fears. The plane was indeed leaking fuel. The explosion sent shockwaves through the cabin, throwing the passengers into a state of panic and causing the plane to tremble violently. In a bid to calm everyone down, the captain urged them to remain seated and composed. With just one engine remaining and a mere 45 tons of fuel left, the aircraft's ability to stay airborne was severely compromised. Slowly but steadily, the plane began to lose altitude. With only 600 kilograms of fuel remaining and still 240 kilometers away from their destination, the situation looked increasingly dire. And at this point, the captain's biggest fear of the moment became reality as the left engine of the plane also ceased functioning after running at full thrust. The aircraft began to glide over the Atlantic Ocean without any working engines, and at the same time, adding to the chaos, the power system of the plane also shut down, plunging the entire cabin into darkness. Fortunately, the critical equipment in the cockpit was still functioning on emergency power. With largest airport a mere 120 kilometers away and the plane descending to 30,000 feet, the crew faced a nerve-wracking reality. If the aircraft couldn't make it to the airport while gliding, a water landing was inevitable. Immediately, the crew sprung into action, swiftly preparing the passengers for the possibility. Yet, landing on water posed grave risks. Passengers would endure a significant impact upon landing, and even if they managed to survive that, the threat of drowning loomed large. Gliding a hefty commercial aircraft is no easy feat. Everything hinged on the control of the plane's center, which the pilots were manually managing with levers. The plane was descending at a rate of 200 feet per minute, spelling out the next 15 minutes as a make-or-break moment for the 306 souls aboard. Their fate hung in the balance, poised between life and death. After a few tense minutes, the gap between the aircraft and the airport dwindled to just 15 kilometers. According to protocol, the flight should have been at an altitude of 3,000 feet at this point. However, the plane was still soaring at 13,000 feet. If the captain had abruptly pitched the aircraft downward to rapidly reduce altitude, there would have been about a 90% chance of crash landing. Sensing the gravity of the situation, the pilot made a quick decision, executing a 360-degree turn right then and there. This maneuver kept the distance to the airport unchanged, but it effectively lowered the altitude from 8,000 feet to 5,000 feet. It is still higher than the recommended level, but a safer compromise given the circumstances. The pilot couldn't perform a 360-degree turn again, so they decided to steer the plane directly towards the airport runway. Then, using the series of 5 turns, the aircraft maneuvered in a zigzag pattern. This strategy gave them extra time and helped the plane gradually decrease altitude. Typically during landing, flaps and engine thrust are employed to keep the nose of the plane up. However, the pilot couldn't deploy the flaps without engine thrust. Doing so would have tilted the plane further due to air drag from the flaps, risking a crash landing. So the pilot made the tough call to land with the flaps closed. As a result, there was a jarring impact between the plane and the runway, causing 8 tires to burst within 12 minutes. The plane began to skid and veer to one side. Yet the captain showed his remarkable skill by gently applying the brakes, eventually bringing the aircraft to a halt. Following the landing, a massive explosion erupted as the plane's landing gear caught fire. Thankfully, the quick response from the emergency crew stationed near the runway swiftly extinguished the flames. Thanks to the courageous actions of the pilot of Air Transit Flight 236, all 306 passengers on board were safe. To this day, this remarkable incident stands as a unique record in aviation history, the only instance where a plane collided to its destination for such an extended period without any engine power. Now came the crucial question: why did the error occur? An investigation into the incident revealed that during the pre-takeoff maintenance in Toronto, engineers had replaced a component of the plane's engine. Unfortunately, this replacement part didn't fit snugly, causing vibrations during engine operation. These vibrations, in turn, ruptured a nearby fuel line. Additionally, the pilot was found to have contributed to the situation by not giving sufficient attention to the fuel leakage. Moreover, leaving the crossfeed valve open for an extended period resulted in fuel from engine 1 seeping into engine 2, exacerbating the fuel depletion issue. Now, I want to hear your thoughts regarding this incident. Whose fault do you think is more evident in this story? Tell us in the comments below. If you enjoyed this, make sure to subscribe to the channel to get more content related to this. See you in our next video. Until then, take care and thanks for watching.